A knee specialist. A one-trick pony, right? Not at the Christ Hospital Health Network. We have integrated specialists for every area of orthopedic surgery, like perfecting your golf swing again, night strolls with your partner, or walking your daughter down the aisle. Everything it takes to get your life back. We specialize in that too. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 823, Emotional Health Money Mistakes During Divorce with Christine Luken.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Pound This Podcast. Before we get into this conversation all about divorce and emotional health and actually how so much of it rings a bell to me in relation to binge eating, I want to tell you about something that helped me through my divorce and my nutritional needs, which is Clean Eats in Newport. Oh my gosh. Lifesaver, because I've been a meal prepper for the past decade or so. And, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into it, even though I loved it, but going through, breakups and some hard emotional times where there's a lot of emotional eating. I'm like, you know what? I want somebody to meal prep for me. And that was Clean Eats in Newport. They have so many amazing options. Everything is made with fresh food. You got all of your macros and ingredients and calories are all listed on there so you can make it fit whatever you are doing, whether you're on a strict plan or you're not. If you're needing more protein or less carb or vegetarian, they've got so many options there, especially in the frozen section. You can just go in anytime and grab some meals. Also with the cafe, the flatbreads, those are amazing. And the melts, super, super good. And I've had like the Philly steak bowl, also good. Just this weekend, I got the chocolate banana smoothie while I was painting my new house. Delish. So whether you're in a good headspace or bad headspace, or you're worried about nutrition or you're not, you just want convenience, Clean Eats in Newport, Chef's Kiss, they are amazing. Give them a try. They're awesome. Now, if you're looking for somebody to narrow things down and have a coach, and you want to know specifically exactly how to eat for your macros or to hit your goals because you're trying to gain strength or you're trying to lose weight, then you need to check out Sarah and Team Fit with Me. Sarah is amazing. She's got a whole team of people that will tell you exactly what to eat. So if you're going to Clean Eats in Newport, then Jess can build out a whole plan for you and be like, okay, here's how your Clean Eats meals fits into the rest of your day. And this is what the rest of your day needs to look like to meet your macros so you can hit your goals. So if nutrition is a thing for you, man, Sarah and her team can really help you out. Also, they can build out all of your workout plans. So it's like having your personal trainer and your personal nutrition coach. They'll go through all of your labs, check out your hormones, check out any autoimmune diseases. And if you've looked into Sarah before and you're like, you know what, I just can't afford this right now, then go back and check what Sarah's got offered. She's changed her plans. She's changed her pricing. She wants to make sure that she can help everybody that wants or needs help. So reach out to Sarah, ask some questions. She's fantastic. She's very approachable. Just reach out and ask. Go to teamfitwithme.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, returning guest, even though it's been 2 years and life has changed drastically since our first conversation, all talking about divorce and finances. Hello, Christine Luken.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good.
So you have, I know we had a conversation all about financial stuff. And I think before we talked about like just your health and your financial health, and that was in 2021. And privately, you and I discussed divorce, but not like on this podcast, because I know that's kind of your jam is walking people through divorce and finances. Because finances are just messy and hard to begin with. But then going into that arena, there's a lot to play. So before we get into that whole conversation, for people that probably missed that episode because it was 2 years ago, tell me all about you and your background and how you got to where you are, all the things.
Yeah. So I always like to tell people I didn't get into financial coaching because I've always done this perfectly. Because in fact, it was quite the opposite. I crashed and burned financially at age 26, despite having an accounting degree. And it was because I was engaged to a guy who had terrible money habits, He was in and out of jobs and even in and out of jail. And I thought if I just loved him enough that he would change.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. He got worse. So thankfully, I did not marry him. So I call that my almost divorce because I almost got married to the wrong guy. But that was, it was hard because I essentially hit financial rock bottom. And I felt like such a hypocrite because I had this accounting degree. I was working as an accountant for a multi-million-dollar machine company, but I was bouncing my own checks at home.
Oh.
So there was a lot of shame and embarrassment, and it did feel like a divorce because my ex-fiance and I, we had been together for 7 years. We had pets together. We were living together. Our finances were entangled. He didn't really have any credit in his own name, so all of the debt was accumulated under my name, and it was a mess. Honestly, I had to reach out to my family to get help, and it was this process of healing both my emotions and my finances. But once I got on the other side of it, I had this moment of realization about a year after I left him. I was driving to work, and this thought struck me that I wasn't worried about money. And that came as a complete shock because for the previous 7 years, that's all I did was worry about money. Mm. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not worried about money.
That sounds nice.
I know. Well, it was just like, I don't think I realized the burden that I was under until I was out from under it. And that's what started my journey with helping other people with their personal finances. And, without going into great detail, it started as me volunteering and helping teach a financial literacy course at my church. And then it evolved into informally coaching people who needed more help with the class. And then that led to me getting my coaching certification, but honestly just thinking like, oh, this is my volunteer work. But the more I coached people, the more I fell in love with the transformation that I was seeing in people, and it wasn't even the debt that people were paying off or the fact that they were increasing their net worth. It was the quality of life. It was just like seeing them released from that burden of stress and worry was just so gratifying. And so I ended up leaving my 6-figure accounting job to start my financial coaching business. And that's been 11 years now.
Oh man,
I
dang.
know.
So, geez, can you even put a number on like how many people that you have helped through this at this point?
Well, it's got to be in the thousands between the people I have coached and the people who have gone through my classes. It might even be tens of thousands because, I've now written 3 books. So when you look at all that stuff together, it's a lot of people that I've helped.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
tell me about your books.
Yeah. So the first book is Money is Emotional, Prevent Your Heart from Hijacking Your Wallet. And I always tell people it's like the least boring money book you're ever going to read because it's half tabloid of my life as I crashed and burned financially. But then it's also part how to. The difference between Money is Emotional and a lot of the other personal finance books out there is that for each of the areas of personal finance, we talk about the different emotional pitfalls and emotional triggers that people can encounter. And then I give people very tangible ways to deal with those emotional triggers and even how to harness the power of emotion so that you can achieve your financial goals.
Awesome.
So my second book is for entrepreneurs. It's called Manage Money Like a Boss. So I know you and I were talking right before we went live about your business finances.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, I'm like, girl, I just need to send you that book.
I don't like budgets.
I don't like them either. I don't like to call them that. I like to call them prosperity plans.
Oh, well, that makes it sparkle a little bit more.
I know. And then my most recent book is Financial Dignity After Divorce.
And what's that book about?
So that book is really all about healing your relationship with money as you're going through and coming out of divorce.
Man, I could use all of those books.
Would you like me to send you the box set?
Yes. Got a lot of reading to do. I feel though, personally through my divorce, and you tell me, you've talked to thousands of people at this point. Like, I don't feel like my divorce financially rocked me in any sort of way. It didn't deplete me. It was very amicable and stuff like that. So it wasn't anything where other than it just went to like, oh, I'm responsible for all the bills by myself now, versus them being split up. So I don't really feel like that, I guess, terrorized me in any sort of way, but I just feel like I do have a very unhealthy relationship, I guess. And that's not something because I save money. I'm not financially stupid, but I'm like, I know I could be better at it, but going through divorce, I think puts such a spotlight on what you do and like the choices that you made before, you're making through the process of lawyers and figuring stuff out. And then where are you going moving forward and how do you do that by yourself? So is that like kind of the process most people go through, or do they just get like kind of like you did, you get just like blown up and then you're starting from like scorched earth?
I see a wide spectrum of situations, and I see people who are coming out with nothing but debt, fighting over who's going to pay what debts. And this is at all income levels. Most of my coaching clients are higher income. Some of them are coming out of the divorce with a decent amount of income or support and assets. And then some of them, like I said, it was just a matter of, all right, let's pay, sell the house, pay off everything we can, and then split the difference. And they're starting in the hole. So I really see a wide spectrum of clients, coming out of divorce. And I think you were very fortunate that there wasn't a lot of chaos and a lot of arguing around the finances, because that's actually pretty common.
Yeah. Well, I think that, for us, because we had dated 5 years before we got married, so everything was already kind of separate. And so when we got married, we're like, well, this works for us. What do we need to combine everything for? So, which just played nicely into divorce, even though obviously that wasn't the plan. That's not what we wanted to happen. But I think that, so when it ended, it was just like, you keep your stuff and I keep my stuff. And I'm like, I want you to live your best life. I'm like, I'm not trying to take away anything from you from moving forward. And he felt the same way about me of like, okay, well, everything's already just kind of, down to 401ks, separate 401ks, separate savings account, separate checking account, separate everything. And so like, it's just like, okay, well, split and peace out. So like, that's where I think the only thing is just, selling a house and then we're just splitting that. So I think for me, it's like, okay, well, when I make the money I'm going to make from, which I'm very fortunate. I haven't sold my house yet. I don't know what's going to happen, but to take the money from that and then move forward. And I think in a financially smart way, because I feel like I'm a person that's just like avoidant of all those things. Like it'll take care of itself because it always kind of has. And so but I'm like, okay, but I don't know anything about investing and all this other stuff, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm out on my own. Know that now there's no like safety net of like, if it hits the fan, I got somebody here to back me up through something, because I like to take risks and I like to travel and I like to do all the like stuff that I like to do. So how do I be smart about that as a solo player when we were together 18 years? So that's a long time to have somebody else that you're just kind of like, oh, I got some cushion here. So I think that for me, that's the bigger thing in my personal experience of just like, this makes me want to be better at something that I know that I'm not great
Yeah.
at. And luckily I'm not starting from a really bad space. I'm starting from a decent space, but it's like, how do I make this better and not erupt myself?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's definitely something that you want to be thinking about, because a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they're not necessarily flat broke. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise they wouldn't be able to pay me.
Yeah.
Most of my clients are like, they either feel like they're kind of on shaky ground, or they're like okay, but they know they're not where they need to be. And I do see avoidance as a theme, especially it seems like more so for women. Um, and I don't mind telling you my age. I'm 49. I was actually very hopeful that the younger generation was going to be, that the women were going to be a lot more proactive with their finances and taking an active role in their finances. But I'm still seeing that that's not the case, where they're just letting their partner deal with it, or they make enough money to where they can kind of be a little sloppy. They can get away with it.
Yeah.
But then they get to this point to where they're like, gosh, am I going to regret this if I don't spend the time now to get this right? And, maybe I do need help. And I think that's why a lot of women in particular want to work with a financial coach as they're coming out of divorce, because they don't have that sounding board. They don't have that other person to keep them in check and kind of talk them off the ledge if they're going to do something crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And just to kind of like look at everything and say, yeah, you're on the right track, or yes, it's reasonable to spend this much on X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely see that a lot with my divorcing clients. And I love to remind people that money is like the third person in your marriage. Even though you and your ex are breaking up, you and money are together forever. And so if you are ignoring money after your divorce, figuratively, it's almost like you and money are sitting on opposite ends of the couch. And you're like, okay, I can't ignore you anymore, but I really don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
Like, this is a really awkward first date.
Yeah, right.
And now I'm supposed to be living with you. Okay, I don't even know what we're supposed to be doing together.
Yeah, and then you have to just start from zero, which is like rough.
Yes.
It's like you're already dealing with so much. You know what I mean? It's like how much you're just already fried from going through this extremely emotional, and who knows, like very chaotic experience for most people. I mean, definitely like emotional and this huge life change. And now with that mindset and going in with, being that person, now you're like, oh, now I have to like button up this other thing that I've always had a hard time with. It's like, oh my God, how much crap am I supposed to take is what it kind of feels like. You know what I mean? Of like, oh,
yes.
Now I got to do this too. Like, can I catch a break here?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just had a woman sign up with me, and she basically said, I hate looking at my money, and this is why I'm hiring you, because I need you to look at it with me. I need you to hold my hand and tell me, walk me through this. She's like, I know I can do it if I've got somebody with me, but she's like, I am just petrified to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's not that she doesn't have money. It's not that she doesn't make
Yeah.
money. She's like, I make good money, but I don't want to look at it.
Yeah, I think that, I get some of that because I just feel like I don't want to look at all the stupid decisions I make with it. Then I'll be like, oh God, like I spent that much on coffee. Like, really? I don't need that.
Hey,
but I kind of
I am never going to criticize you about your coffee purchases.
Okay. Well, see, that's where I want to bring this up too, because this is where I feel like the financial, I think I felt like just going through the process of a breakup. I'm very much an emotional eater. So I feel like the past year has been for me of just like dealing with emotions with eating, but that also plays into finances. Cause then it's like,
Yes.
I feel terrible. I'm going to numb this out with food that I'm going to go spend money on when I'm like, I don't need to go buy this extra crap,
Right.
but I'm like, but I deserve it. I need this right now. I'm going through a thing. I want comfort. And I can see that's where you're going to go run up the credit cards and buy all this stuff and do the things. 'Cause you're just kind of like, I just need to feel better and I'm going to blow money to try to get it.
Right. Yeah, and that's common whether you're going through divorce or not. Um, one of the things I tell people is, you know, using money to medicate our emotions does not lead to good results.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
You don't believe in retail
So-
therapy?
Well, I mean, we've all done it, so I'm not going to lie about that. However, what we really need to do is stop and ask ourselves, like, what are we feeling right now? I think if I could teach one thing besides personal finance to high schoolers, it would be emotional intelligence and to talk about how to process emotion, because we're taught to stuff our emotions or to medicate our emotions.
Yeah.
And once we learn how to identify what we're actually feeling and why we're actually feeling that way, then we can find a productive way to meet that emotional need. So I'll give you an example. I had a client who her mom could just really push her buttons. So every time she talked to her mom just had this way of, ticking her off of, it was just like she couldn't do it. It didn't matter what she did. Nothing was right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so she would end up going online and shopping for useless crap after she talked to her mom. So we basically made her a list of 10 things that made her feel good, that cost little to no money. And she taped it to the side of her computer monitor in her home office. And it said, "Are you feeling sad or mad? Question mark. Before shopping, try one of these instead.
Yeah.
Take a bubble bath. Go pet your cat. Go take a walk with your husband." And so it was crazy because it cut her online shopping by about 80%.
That's awesome. See, I do
Yeah.
the same thing with wanting to go into a binge. And so, but sometimes it doesn't work. Like, and I've tried
Right.
it. Like, this example was a few months ago that I'm like, which actually had nothing to do with the divorce at all or anything like that. It was just something else that had like me like emotionally stressed out. And I'm like, I really wanted to binge eat. And I'm like, no, go for a hike. Go for a hike, because that's for me. That's on my list. Go for a walk, get in the woods, go for a hike, do your thing. And I did it. And I went and hit my favorite trail that's close to my house. And I did all the things. And afterwards, I'm like, that didn't do it. Nope. We're getting a big old bag of chips and we are motoring that family size down. And so like, it's one of those where it's just kind of like, I don't know, for me, because that's just where I relate to it, because that's how I numb out, that I'm like, I feel like if I tried it, I'm like, at least I went to my list. And if I'm on the other side of it, then I still, I don't know. I don't know what else to do, but those chips were delicious. And then I just kind of moved on after that. So I don't know if that's the right thing to do, if that's the advice you would give on a financial level, but that's how I relate anyway.
Well, I think it's great that you didn't beat yourself up over it and that you said, okay, yeah, I did this. Tomorrow's a new day. And I think that's the other thing too, is when you do make a financial mistake, when your emotions are out of control, it's like the worst thing that you can do is to feel guilty over the bad thing, because then you're basically compounding the bad feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
And making it last longer. And one of the things that I do with all of my clients is we make sure that there is fun money built in to their prosperity plan. So I don't do your traditional budgets. Yes, we track spending, but it's more like a healthy eating plan, right? We were talking about health last time. It's like, I like to tell people there's no financial keto in my world. You get to have some of the fun stuff. In fact, I insist upon it because what I'm trying to teach people is how to behave with their finances for the long term.
Yeah.
And if I put you on a very strict budget and all you've known is being out of control and never tracking anything, and then you go to something super regimented, at some point you're going to get tired of that. But the only other thing that you know is to be completely out of control and not tracking anything.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to say, like, okay, I'm not trying to take you, 10 miles over here. I'm like, let's walk 10 feet over here. And then let's walk another 10 feet over here.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start changing things slowly but surely. And it's almost like when you're meeting with someone and you're counseling them about their nutrition, rather than telling them, stop drinking Coke or Pepsi and stop eating candy bars, you say, okay, I want you to drink at least 2 glasses of water a day for the first week.
Yeah.
Right. And so naturally, they're going to drink less pop, probably, unless they want to stay in the bathroom for an hour a day. Right. So, it's almost like you crowd out the negative things with the good things, but you still allow room for fun, because being good with your personal finances doesn't mean that you never spend money, that you never have any fun.
Yeah. So like, what does the process typically look like? Because I mean, what I think of when you think of, I'm going to have somebody help me with my finances, it feels like, okay, do you go into like paying off credit cards? Like, is there any sort of like formula of like, okay, well, we're going to pay off credit cards first and then we're going to do this and we're going to do this? Or is it a case by case? Is it like, how does the cleanup begin, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I work with my clients for 6 months. So the first month is always about awareness. And I actually don't ask people to change anything during the first month, which
Okay.
makes them very surprised. So what we're doing is we're getting clarity on what is actually going on in their personal finances. And we're also getting clarity on what success looks like for them. Because I can't create a plan for you unless I know those two things. Where are we right now and where do we want to go? So that whole entire first month that we're working together is really about getting our arms around what exactly is going on and all the pieces of the finances, getting things organized, and starting to dream about the future and say, this is how we want to feel about money. These are the things we want to spend our money on. This is how we want money to support our happiness. And it's not until the second month that we start tracking. So like I said, I don't like doing super strict budgets, but in order for us to figure out where everything's going, we have to track.
Yeah.
Now, we use technology to make it easy. I even go in and set up the personal finance app for you, which a lot of my clients who are not numbers people, they're like, that is totally worth the coaching for you just to set that up.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I've thought about those apps before, and I'm like, that would probably just really work well for me.
Yeah.
But then not only setting it up, but then I would get worried of like, is this how my like security is going to get breached? Is this I'm going to do this thing to help me, and then this is going to be the thing that robs me? Like, is that like conspiracy theory thinking?
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. So yeah, the app that I use is extremely well known. They have very high security. They're not actually they don't have access to your bank account. It's actually just the data that they're pulling in and organizing for you. But the nice thing is that you get to see everything all in one place, because I find that people are spending on their debit cards. They've got things automatically coming out of their checking accounts. They've got a couple of credit cards. And so it's really hard to keep track of like, oh, what are we spending on eating out? If you're spending some cash, if you're spending some off the debit card and you're spending some off various credit cards, you don't really know what you're spending unless you've got something that's pulling everything all together.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so then we use the personal finance app together through the rest of the coaching so that people really get used to using it. So we're using it together. They're checking it in between sessions, but then like each month has a focus. So, we are looking at debt. So if people have debt that they want to get paid off, we figure out what's the most emotionally satisfying way for them to pay off their debt. We look at the various savings goals. To me, it's like your savings is almost like bubble wrap. It protects you from being jostled around by life, right?
Yeah.
People are gonna get flat tires. You're gonna have a hole in the roof that needs to be patched. There's gonna be crap that happens, and having that savings is kind of like that bubble wrap that helps you. And then we move into other things like insurance and investing, which I don't sell any of those products, but what I'm doing is educating you and making sure that you are getting connected to a professional that you feel comfortable working with. And sometimes, like, we even all meet together. So I've actually gone out, I work with people all over the country, and sometimes people say, like, I want a financial planner where I can like walk into their office. Well, if you're in Denver, I've got a huge network of financial planners. I'm going to find 2 or 3 people in Denver. I'm going to talk to them first and make sure that I feel comfortable with you working with them. And then I'll say, okay, I interviewed these 2 people. I think either of them would do a great job for you. Now you get to meet with them, and whatever your gut instinct tells you, whichever person you feel more comfortable with, then that's who you should go with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just such an important point too, that I feel like it's like having a therapist. Like, your money
Yes.
is so close to you and so tied to emotion and shame and everything else, that like you want to have somebody that you can let your guard down in order to be able to actually help you. So I think that's just such an important point.
Well, and technically my certification is a certified financial counselor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. So I always do say it is part counseling and it is part finance.
Well, and speaking of emotions, so like, what are the most common emotional mistakes people make going through this highly emotional event?
Yes. So, we already talked about one of them, which is, kind of like putting your head in the sand and trying to avoid it. So I tend to call that one like the deer in the headlights, where it's like, I mean, we know you're driving on a country road, that deer stops. You're like, oh my God, like, move one way or the other. Otherwise you're going to get hit. Right.
Yeah.
So when you become paralyzed and you fail to take action on the things that you need to in your finances, especially during divorce, if you don't make a decision, that's actually a decision, because there's going to come a point to where you're forced into a decision.
Definitely.
As you're moving through divorce. Right now, honestly, the fact that you and your ex were able to, split things and not be fighting over things, I mean, that's a huge blessing, because in a lot of cases, that's not it.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot more conflict over that.
Yeah.
And, if you ignore those things, or, you don't get your attorney the financial information that they need, or you don't want to enter into those discussions, then it's usually not going to end up going well for you.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing that I see, and I especially see this for women, and this was my mistake, and you alluded that this was also your mistake, I call this giving away the store. This is when you just want the relationship to be over, and you will agree to anything so they will just go away.
Yeah, well, that's a harsh way to put it.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's how I felt with my ex. I'm just like, whatever. Like, I'll give you whatever you want. You can keep all the furniture. I ended up taking responsibility for all of the debt because I just wanted to be out of the relationship. Whereas if I would have slowed down and said, okay, what's really the fair thing to happen here? You know what? You helped me to run up this debt. And if you don't want to help me pay it off, well, guess what? Your car is in my name, covered under my insurance, because your license is suspended because you had 2 DUIs in 6 months. I mean, I should have taken that car and sold it and used it to pay off the debt. Like,
yeah.
And I would have been totally justified in doing that, but it was just like, I let him have it. I just gave away too much stuff because I hated conflict and I was tired of fighting.
Yeah. I guess for me, again, like I guess my circumstance is pretty rare. That I was just like, we're both hurting here. Like, I don't want to cause any more pain or hurt. Like, let's just make this as easy and simple. And I'm like, for me, feeling like I had to like gun after money felt like I'm hurting somebody who's already hurting, and I'm hurting, and that's going to hurt me. So like, let's just try to make this as peaceful and easy as possible, because like I'm like, I just feel like the hurt is already enough. Like, I don't need to pile on the hurt, at least where I was. So I'm like, whatever I got to do to make this as peaceful and easy as possible without having a fight in any sort of way was kind of my, just whatever. Let's just get this over with, please. Let's not drag this out.
Yeah. But if you have your attorney telling you like, hey, you're giving him too much or you're giving her too much, you probably need to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't go through the actual divorce process, although it felt like a divorce. So, honestly, I didn't have any of that counsel. You know what I mean? So I'm sure there's probably people who are listening who were never legally married. And so, if they were in that situation like me, where all the debt was run up in their name, you pretty much have no recourse.
Yeah. I mean, on a side note, like how has that impacted your relationships moving forward of somebody that did that to you? I mean, does that make you scared to be in a relationship or married? I mean, I know that was a long time ago and I'm not sure what your relationship status is now, but it seems like outside of the money thing, that would kind of terrorize me towards dating somebody.
Well, you know what? The first and smartest thing I did when I left my ex was I got counseling.
Yeah.
And, I learned that I was in a codependent relationship, and I didn't even know what that was. I mean, basically I was like his mother. I was taking on responsibilities that should have been his, financially and otherwise. And, it wasn't a healthy relationship. And so I had to learn what a healthy relationship looked like. But I will say, when you've dated someone who's terrible with money, when you meet and start dating a guy who is financially responsible, that is a very sexy trait. It's like, oh, you max out your 401k.
Not your credit cards. Yeah.
So I have been married to my husband, Nick, it'll be almost 20 years this fall.
Oh, geez, dang.
So,
well, you figured it out.
Yes, and he is like the exact opposite. He is very financially responsible.
Oh, that's awesome. So, like, did you have to have that conversation when you first met, though, of like, I went through this, like, show me your portfolio?
Well, so it's funny. So when I started dating my husband, we were working together. And so I worked in the HR and accounting department. So I knew he had a clean criminal record, clean background check. He had excellent credit. And I knew how much money he was making. And I also knew how much money he was putting in his 401k.
Yeah, and doing some detective work there.
But it was a relatively small company. So, I pretty much had access to all the HR records.
That's awesome. Well, I just think that's such a great story, though, because I feel like so many people go through bad relationships or go through any sort of bad thing, and then just how long do you just stay in that and continue the pattern without working through it and being like, oh, there is something better, rather than just assuming everyone's like this or this is going to happen again, and I'm just going to stay in this rut. So I just think that, but I feel like what I'm hearing from you is you went through counseling. So it's like working on me and figuring out what I'm doing in this so I don't repeat that step again and look for the same things in that kind of person that's just going to come in and I'm going to live through this again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say the final, I won't say it's the final emotional money mistake that people make during divorce, but I'll say the third big one that I see is people using money as a weapon, where they're really angry and they're trying to punish their partner because of some pain that they caused them. And I'll give you an example of this that I talk about in my book, Financial Dignity After Divorce. There was a friend of mine who was a financial planner. He had come to me and he was like, I wish I could have gotten this woman to work with you. She just wouldn't listen to me. She was really pissed off at her ex-husband because he had cheated on her with her best friend.
Oh, yeah, I'd be mad too.
And so when she got her portion of his 401k, because she had been a stay-at-home mom, she told the financial planner that she wanted to withdraw $50,000 of that money. And he tried to explain to her, okay, you can do that, but because you're not of retirement age, you're going to have a penalty on this. You're going to owe taxes. And she was like, I don't care. She's like, I'm going to buy a red BMW convertible. And every time I drop the kids off or pick them up, I'm going to rub it in his face that I spent his money on this sports car, which honestly was now her money.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, she really punished herself because she ended up owing between 20 and 30 grand between the penalties and the taxes on that 50,000. And then if you were to like plug that money into an investment calculator and say like, okay, if I got a reasonable amount of return of like 6% over 20 years, it probably would have added up to over $250,000 to $300,000.
Dang, she could have got multiple sports cars.
I know. I know. So, I tell people like, look, if you have been through a really crappy drama-filled divorce, you absolutely deserve some reward when you get through that. But, it didn't have to be a $50,000 car. You know what? She could have taken $5,000 out of the savings or something and bought a Louis Vuitton handbag or gone on a yoga trip to Bali or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, she still would have had that reward without hurting herself, because when you use money as a weapon, it's a double-edged sword. It can hurt you too.
Yeah. It just seems like, yeah. I mean, it's so like, I think that when you are clear-headed and you're on the outside of that, but like you understand it, but when you're in the middle of that, it's like almost like their blinders are on and you can't see anywhere outside of revenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I tell people, if there's a high amount of anger, that you need to find a physical outlet for that. So go take a kickboxing class, go do the axe throwing, like do something that is going to physically move the anger out of your body, because the best revenge is your long-term financial success. If that's really what you want is revenge, that's really the best revenge. And the other thing that I tell people is, the best financial decisions are made when you consult both the voice of reason and your emotions. So the voice of reason is kind of always there in the background. Like, it's very calm, it's very quiet, but our emotions can be very loud or they can get real quiet, right?
Yeah.
So if our emotions are loud, we can't hear the voice of reason. So I always tell people, wait until your emotional volume comes down so that you can hear both the voice of reason and your emotions. Because we don't want to leave emotion out of the equation, because we really can't. And I know, at least I've had this experience where things have looked like logically the right decision on paper, but I had a bad gut feeling about something and I overrode that. And then I found out later why it was a bad decision. So we really want to look at both sides of it. We want to consult our emotions, but we also want to consult the voice of reason as well.
So would you say, out of the clients that you've had how do you often get people that are very fresh out of these situations that are looking for a coach, or are you getting them after they've calmed and cooled a little bit?
It's a wide variety. I get some of them like, hey, we just filed for divorce. I need your help. I have had women hire me 2 to 3 years after the divorce, and they've said, okay, this is behind me, but I still feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants and I need to get my crap together.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a lot of people that are like at the point where they're like, I want to get divorced, but I'm afraid that I won't be able to financially do this without a coach, so I need you in order to get a divorce?
I am usually not brought in before, and typically I do not work with someone until they are legally separated.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Because some divorces don't happen. And I do also work with couples, but I work with couples on the other end of the spectrum where they basically, couples who love each other, but money is like the one thing that they quibble and argue about.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we could like just get on the same page about money, then like we would have an A++ marriage.
So how does that process look? Because I mean, again, like let's talk about like that's happier than this split in money. How does how do you get people to come together on it?
Well, obviously they both need to agree to do the coaching. And so, I tell them like, look, I want you both to be on the call where I ask you questions and see if we're a good fit for coaching. So you can ask me questions as well, because I want them to understand that I'm not on one person's team or the other person's team. This is about bringing them together. Mm-hmm. And it's very helpful to have a neutral third party as part of the process, because a lot of times one person will say like, oh, so-and-so's the emotional spender. And then when we get into things, they're like, oh yeah, she's always buying leggings at Lululemon. And then I'm looking and I'm like, what's a $650 sports bet? Oh, well, I don't do that very often. And I'm like, you're complaining about her $60 leggings, but you just spent $650 on, March Madness.
Yeah.
So it's, it's kind of balancing people and bringing them into, bringing them both into check. But the other thing too is to have them see the vision of what the big picture is together. Yeah. Because they usually don't talk about that. Like, what are the things we really want? It's like sometimes they get stuck in the nitpickiness of stuff. But it's interesting because once they get on the same page of like, okay, this is what we want to accomplish, and we know what we're trying to accomplish, it makes it easier to scale down on the sports betting or buy the less expensive leggings.
I mean, you really are a therapist. It's like couples counseling, but for finance, mm-hmm. like that, it feels like how many couples should probably go into some sort of counseling before they, move in together or before they get married or whatever. I mean, yes. Finances is a part of that. Again, it's like, it's part of your life. And if you're joining with somebody, like, that seems like such the wise decision to make. And obviously, like, I mean, you are just pretty much a therapist. I don't even know if a therapist could walk somebody through the financial things. You know what I mean? When how important is that? That's huge. That could end in divorce. Just that thing alone, because it's such a huge component.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's, I think financial coaches are a rare breed because we are good with money and we are good with numbers, but we also have to be very emotionally intelligent. And, we have to be able to help our couples, clients, navigate conflict and be okay sitting with people's emotions. And I find that a lot of traditional financial folks like bankers and CPAs and financial planners, there's a good number of them who they just want to manage the money. Like, I just want to manage your money, or I just want to do your tax return. I don't want to get into this emotional stuff. Whereas with me, I'm like, hey, bring it. I am okay. I will get down there in the emotional muck with you. I will hand you a virtual Kleenex. We can cry together. That it's all a part of it.
I think it's so interesting because I feel like, I guess you tell me if I'm wrong. I think that like a perception is if you think of somebody has like a bunch of money, let's just say somebody's a CEO and they have a bunch of money, you just like assume they're good with money. You're just like, well, they make a lot of it, so they must know what they're doing and how to handle it. But to hear like how many people that make a lot of money are making the biggest financial mistakes is so interesting.
Yeah. Well, I like to say that making money and keeping money and growing it are two totally different skill sets.
Yeah. So like, I mean, is the trick like investments, or is it just knowing yourself and having a plan?
Well, it's definitely having a plan. It's knowing what's going on with your finances, but it's also understanding your unique emotional money triggers. And that's kind of like my secret sauce. Like as I'm talking with people, because I've done this for so long, it's almost like I can pick up just listening to people. And I'm like, there's something under there.
Yeah. So,
but once we uncover that and they're like, oh, that's why I do that, then we can say, all right, let's take this unhealthy pattern out of your unconscious and let's rewrite it to what we want it to be so that we can move forward.
Yeah.
And not continue to be tripped up by this particular emotional trigger, which it's interesting. Sometimes the trigger source isn't even about money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same thing too. Like again, I relate with binge
with
eating.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like the
It's so
trigger's not that
similar.
I'm just so hungry or I just love
Right.
Cheetos so much. There's
Right.
something else going on, and that's the way I choose to deal with it. And it's like, like I'm not going to solve the problem until I figure out what the root issue is.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're a therapist.
Yeah, that's my job. I pull up the roots.
So like what are the levels of coaching? I know you said you work with people 6 months. Are there different options? You work with people different amounts of time. You said you have classes. Like what's your whole buffet line?
So my buffet line is actually pretty slender because I only have one coaching package.
Okay.
and that is 6 months. Now people can do maintenance coaching with me after that 6 months. And the reason why it's 6 months is because that's really how long it takes for us to uncover these emotional triggers, to heal them, to get organized, and to change the habits and really get them set.
Okay.
So I used to have different packages years ago. And what I realized was the people that really got the best results were the ones that were in it for the 6 months, because that's really what they need in order to make those mindset shifts and those habit changes that are going to last and take them forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so then do you have any like big group classes, or do you only do like the 6 month coaching?
Yeah, I don't do group classes because people don't want to talk about their money stuff in front of other people.
Facts. That's totally fair. That makes sense.
I mean, it's like group counseling,
Yeah, that's
most
true.
people don't want to do group
Yeah.
counseling. Now, I do have online courses. So
Okay,
for people
that's
who
what I'm
are
kinda
like,
thinking.
okay, I can't afford to hire you to work with you one-on-one. I do have courses. I've got a mindset course. I've got my signature course, which is Financial Dignity on Demand, which is kind of like the DIY version of my financial coaching. And then I've got a few other ones that are very specific. Like I have one for business owners,
Okay.
small business owners and things of that nature. But, if people hop over to my website, which is just my name, ChristineLuken.com, they can see courses on the menu. They can see coaching on the menu. And then, of course, there's a whole host of blog posts and also my podcast, Money is Emotional, which is on all the major podcast platforms.
And all the books, I'm assuming, too.
Yeah, so any of my books are on Amazon. So if you just search my name on Amazon, all three of those books should come up. You can actually get to them directly from my website. And if you even want to like download the first 3 chapters of each of the books to see if you want to buy it, you can do that too.
Very cool. Yeah, all the things
Yeah.
you got,
All
online
the
courses
things.
and coaching and books and podcasts.
I'm not productive at all.
No.
am I? Well, I mean, I have been doing this for 11 years, so it's not like I just snapped my fingers and it all happened overnight.
Right. But like you were saying, like that's the revenge to the ex, though. It's like,
Yes.
you took me down financially, but look what I created out of this because I figured it out. Like, again, like just exactly to your point of like, this is, I don't have to show you. This is how I showed you by living my best life.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I changed his name. So in my books, I call him Jeff, which is not his real name, because I knew if he ever read a book and he found out that he was in my book, that he would try to sue me for money. So I changed his name.
Smart. See, you're a lawyer too.
I have some lawyer friends.
Yeah.
We'll just say that.
Well, Christine, I really appreciate talking to you again. This is so awesome. And like, I think it's just so helpful. And I think that probably a lot of people listen to this that will benefit a lot from doing your whole array of everything that you have at ChristineLuken.com. So thank you so much for spending some more time with me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
AmandaValentineBites.com.